So overall, pretty good. I mean, I think it needs a little bit more help on the metering rod here. I've got it adjusted out from the way they sent it. Probably 2 turns richer, and it seems like maybe I went 1 turn too far. But either way, I was having issues with it anyways. So just to preface, back up a little bit on the video, this is the Restoration X-Cycle IT200 that I came into, not necessarily possession of, but I came to be working on for a buddy of mine that found me through Instagram that purchased a bike from John. So his concerns basically were that, you know, he had never ridden the bike and had it shipped here from Washington from John. So his whole plan was to ride it, and his brother also got one but moved up north, so kind of split the bikes up. So now he's just kind of trying finally getting to the point where he's ready to actually start riding the bike, and needed somebody to go through it and make sure it was ready, and he'd never even had gas in it. So we needed to basically do all the break-in on the motor and go through. And so before I even did any of that, like as it arrived, it had the stock Mikuni on there, and I went ahead and cranked it up with some 20-to-1, knowing that it barely had, you know, maybe 5 minutes on the top end and everything, because per John's whole thing, before he sends a bike home, he cranks it up a little bit and does a test ride. But really, you know, you got to really do those full heat cycles to make sure everything's solid. So anyways, one of the very first things I found out on the bike was that the head actually had a leak, and I didn't necessarily discover that was the problem until after I'd already gone back and done the Electron and everything, chasing jetting issues. But I was getting the same type of response from the throttle. When I would give it throttle, it would idle just fine, but it wouldn't take any throttle at all. And I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe the jetting is super rich or super lean. Checking my plug color to make sure that I've got everything dialed in, and kind of had those issues. But you know, come to find out, you know, so I disassembled the top end and everything to go in there and make sure that everything is up to spec, make sure that the squish was set correctly, make sure that the piston ring end gap was set correctly, and basically just kind of compile some information for the customer so that he could know what he was working with, just so that in the future he's not going into a situation blind where maybe he needed to kind of have some better information on what to buy, that kind of thing. So anyways, discovered upon taking all that apart, like in between the copper gasket and the head, there was a lot of moisture and unspent fuel and stuff like that all the way around. It was pretty wet, which typically you're not going to see that if you've had a good seal. And I thought it was a little odd, so I didn't necessarily immediately attribute that to the running issue with the Mikuni. I just thought maybe, you know, he wasn't really concerned with the running condition as much as he was with, you know, just being able to have it idling in the driveway to be able to get it out and get it sold. So anyways, I pressed on, got all my measurements, did everything like that, and was able to get the Electron installed. And upon starting it up, I was still kind of getting some similar issues where it wouldn't take throttle. And that's when I discovered that the head still wasn't sealing. I found a spot actually right here behind the, kind of close. And another thing that I did was take off the frame to head mount because of the loss of seal that will create when the frame flexes. If you're riding it pretty hard, it'll lose seal there and you'll grenade your bike. So that was in the Yamaha wrench report. Everybody knows that. If you plan on riding the bike, you're going to take that off. Yamaha, I mean, like I said, that wrench report came out not long after this bike came out in '86. That information was around in '87 and '88. So anybody still running those, do your research, do some reading, find that out. I only know because of the forums. So thank all you guys for putting stuff up like that. So anyways, we took that off. One of the things I discovered too is that there was a sheared off bolt that he had used anyways, and it was a little shoddy, and a lot of these head studs here were when I took the head off, 2 of these head studs here were loose. So I had to go back through, and they were all dirty. So I ended up taking all those back out, chasing them all with a dye, and putting them back in there with some blue Loctite, and and getting all that stuff done the right way, so that when you hook your torque wrench up there, you don't have any dirty threads that are giving you a false read on your torque wrench. I mean, we're only talking about 22 Newton meters here, so or 22 foot-pounds rather. So you're not going to have a whole lot of, there's not a lot of room there, or there is a lot of room there for error. If you got dirty threads and they're binding up real good, you're going to get a false reading. You're not going to get a good seal. So at first I thought that's what it was. I pressed on. I tightened all these nuts down well past their torque value, recommended torque value. I mean, I was right at the limit, thinking I was going to be able to get seal. After I took it back apart, made it all dry again, used acetone, got all the residue off, cleaned up that seal surface, and still wasn't getting seal. You were still getting unspent fuel. You were seeing like a wet spot right here behind the head. So I actually ended up pulling the head off. I have a really nice flat welding table that we use, and I put it on a stone, ran it across the stone flat. I was able to see some low spots in the head, especially that spot where it was leaking, and I was able to kind of work it on that stone a little bit. I actually did take a file to it, a super fine file, and took off some material there and smoothed everything out just enough to get it to seal. Went back over it with the stone, made sure it was all even, smooth, good to go. Reassembled everything, used some copper head gasket sealant after I re-annealed the gasket, torched it nice and red hot, got it fresh again. And I got it back on there and let the copper paint cure up, and it sealed right up. And I think I waited like 3 hours after I did it, make sure it was fully cured and everything, and bike cranked right up. No longer had that starvation issue when you would give it throttle, and sounded amazing. It tuned right up. So real happy with the success on that, and definitely that was our issue. So another thing that I did was seal up this spot right here on the exhaust. I got some high temp red RTV, got it around the flange on the inside and on the head itself, to get that sealed up, because you were going to getting a lot of exhaust. Like even with the amount that I did to clean it up, you're still getting a little bit of spooge here. So I mean, there's only so much you can do here. I'm sure other guys have better solutions, but the high temp RTV seems to do okay for a little while. So as far as the review on Restoration X-Cycle, from what I can tell, just kind of going through, getting everything ready for this guy, I mean, the bike looks amazing. He's got brand new Excel rims, tires are fresh, cable guides. I mean, he kind of uses, like, I don't know if it's him. It doesn't have anything to do with him, but one of these cheap cable guides on here broke off. But overall, I mean, the dude does amazing work. All this stuff's clean. I did end up fixing the tank decals that he puts on there. He's got a thing for putting the tank decals on a flat plane versus how they actually were from the factory. So I reordered some different ones that have a different perforation on them that last a little bit longer and don't bubble up so bad. So we got that dialed in, but for the most part, I mean, I really don't have a whole lot of negative things to say. I mean, does a great job. There's some parts on here that I actually not necessarily haven't really looked for, but I mean, you're going to get that discard there. I'm sure if I looked hard enough, I could find it. I know Hotfoot Moto is the one who does the black chain guard versus the white wax one. As well as this chain guard here and the chain grab there. So if you're using an O-ring chain, you're going to struggle, or an X-ring chain. This thing is a little bit narrow for those. If you're using an old school natural chain, you'll be all right. But overall, really everything looks super clean. I mean, my only gripe is the powder coating, the head, the jug, and the expansion chamber. I mean, on a liquid cooled bike, that's not an issue. Those water jackets are going to keep all that stuff cooled down, doing their job. If everything's doing its job, you're not going to have to worry about that. But on an air-cooled two-stroke, you're definitely not doing yourself any favors by powder coating those parts, because you're just sealing in all that heat. You're insulating all that heat into the engine. So if you're actually going to be doing any kind of serious riding, and this bike's going to be at operating temp for longer than 20-30 minutes, and you're doing an armor race, and you're going to be on the bike for, an hour and a half, you're definitely going to want to consider having that stuff stripped back down. If you're cheap and you just want it to work and not have to worry about grenading your bike because it got too hot and you cooked a piston, then you can just get away cheap way doing it with paint. But my profession, I actually do for a living, is powder coating and coating solutions. So we do powder coat and we do Cerakote. And Cerakote is the way to go. I'll take you guys inside in a second and show you my IT200 Moto that I built. But Cerakote is definitely the move on air-cooled stuff like this with the fins. It encourages cooling, and it wicks heat off a lot faster, and it withstands up to 1800 degrees. So with this stuff, you know, it only withstands maybe 350 degrees before it starts to get brittle, and over time it will start chipping off and flaking off, and it won't be as shiny as it is right now. It looks like a semi-gloss finish on there. So I mean, at the end of the day, for somebody that's wanting something just to have in the shop or in the house to look good, or at their business or something like that, not bad. But if you're planning on doing some serious riding or getting out there on the weekend doing some trail riding, and you're going to spend some time on the bike, I would recommend going a different route than powder coating those heat sensitive components with powder coat. That's just not the move. So overall, I'm going to give old Restoration X-Cycle a 8.5 out of 10. I mean, everything looks amazing. You can tell he's got all the DCVMX plastic on here. It's not the same vibrancy as the stock stuff. You got the Clark tank on there though, which is nice. The headlight and taillight work, all the wiring's good. Looks like a fresh coil under there. It did have the Mikuni carb on there. I installed the Electron and got it all dialed in. If you guys don't have Electron on your vintage IT, you're doing yourself a disservice. It's unbelievably crispy and nice. I got a little bit more work to do on the metering rod, which is literally a simple adjustment. You just pull the slide out. You have your little metering rod adjustment tool. You push it in and twist it clockwise to make it richer, because you're shortening the needle, and you twist it counterclockwise to make it longer, which makes it leaner. So, or richer. I don't know what I just said there. I got a little word fumbled, but the higher the needle, the richer; the lower the needle, the leaner. So I think I got it. Anyways, yeah. I mean, there's not a whole lot of bad things to say, really. I mean, it's a beautiful looking bike. Like I said, maybe you can tell he does churn them out pretty fast, but I mean, the overall build is great. I mean, new bushings, new hardware. It ain't JIS hardware, but it's fine. It ain't nothing to really complain about unless you just feel like it. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy. If I bought this bike, I don't know what the customer paid. I didn't ask him. I'm assuming John's getting $8,000 somewhere around for these things. I think you're doing good. I mean, it's a lot of money for what it is, because you could buy one and do that yourself for a lot cheaper. But you know, I like it. I'm into it. I think he did a good job, and you know, I'd still recommend having a, you know, if you're talented and you're gonna be planning on riding it, you know, go through it, do your due diligence, and make sure it's got, you know, got good break-in and everything like that, and all that kind of stuff. Kind of just go through and double check all your torque values and get it ready to ride, because I would say it's not ready to ride right out of the box. I'd say it's ready to crank up in the driveway, but I definitely wouldn't let this thing show up at my house and then go straight to the local trails or the local track or whatever and be doing any kind of riding for any extended period of time. So, you know, just some basic stuff to go through. I mean, I had to oil the air filter and you know, easy stuff like that. I think there was a leak on the front fork tube where it was leaking a little bit of oil. I had to replace that crush washer and go back through and torque down both of those adjustments on the bottom of the stanchions. But for the most part, yeah, man, I'm pretty into it. You know, good job, Restoration X-Cycle. You know, I know we've had our whole little things here and there on the interwebs, but overall, I'm into it. So for the last little part of the video, just for some clout, so we kind of know who we're talking about here. I'm Bullet Bob Moto. This is my IT200 Supermoto that I built. You guys can go look at the story on this thing on Bikebound blog and check it out. There's a twin build. I actually, my best friend did a IT200 dirt version, so they're pretty identical. We got the Electron. You know, I did the gold Cerakote on the head to match the DG style, the DG flavor and all that. Got the 17s on here all set up. So we're bumping and grinding. Just got back from Till of the Dragon last weekend. You know, I kind of had boogers on here from when I was at the Super Mini Motard track, but the mountain doesn't really... I'm a little scared to lean this thing over in the mountains, so... Too many crazies out there. Got the RD400 chilling in here. RD200, 87YZ, XJ. Anyways, IT stuff. That's my Restoration X-Cycle review video. A little bit of my stuff, but that's it, y'all.